Good afternoon. Welcome to the Big Show. The Big Show comes at you every day at 5 o'clock. Well, right around 5 o'clock, we try and do it. We try and, explore the world of Pittsburgh sports and everything else that goes with it. Of course, today was the big day. The day that, by the way, I'd be remiss if I didn't say the Big Show brought to you by FanDuel Casino. Thank you to FanDuel Casino. And we will talk a little bit later in the show about all of the different ways you can bet and take advantage of what FanDuel Casino does. Now then, today is the day where we found, we were introduced to the new coach of the Steelers. And of course, not really necessarily a new coach because, he's from Greenfield. It's one of those things where it was an emotional day and he fought back tears and he, talked about his parents and he talked about, I forget what his address is, 1137 Greenfield Avenue or something. And, when they win the seventh trophy, when they win the seventh Lombardi trophy, they're going to start the parade right there at 1137 Greenfield Avenue. And, this is a dream come true, blah, 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 blah. Good. Okay. Listen, the guy won the press conference. If that's what you really care about, he won the press conference. He, talked about how, me and my family now, I was with Green Bay and I was with Dallas. I was the Saints. I was with all these other teams. But really, now I can wear my true colors. This is a dream come true. It is a great story. Look, guy grew up in Greenfield, went to Bishop Boyle, right? Pittsburgh guy. I think one of his first jobs was at Pitt under Paul Hackett. Pittsburgh guy becoming the Pittsburgh Steelers coach. Great story. Great story. And that's the thing about it is, he talked about, different things in Pittsburgh and, clearly had the Pittsburgh accent and all that other good stuff. Listen, there is no question that this guy won the press conference. Okay? But that doesn't matter. I hate to go here, and do things like this, but I remember, press conferences that guys have won that they ended up not being good coaches. So to me, I don't care about that. It was nice. It's a great story. It's a feel-good story. It's a story of a guy who's bounced around in the NFL. And he's had some success. And now we will see. And of course, he paid tribute to Bill Cowher, paid tribute to Mike Tomlin, paid tribute to Dom Capers of all people, and went from there. So that's good. And I think that's where it is, if you're looking for the press conference. But there's a few things that he said to me that probably are a little bit troubling. Also, probably gives you a really good idea of why he got the job. Number one, he talked about the fact that he's going to call the plays, which I think we all expected that, and that's fine. He's a good offensive coordinator, and he's been good with quarterbacks, and his teams have been good at times. Offensively, I think he knows what he's doing, so that's great, wonderful. But I wonder if calling the plays and being the head coach are going to be too much. And I wonder if that's kind of been a problem that he's had. And one of the things he said that was really alarming to me is he said, all the years I coached, I only one time had a top 5 defense and we won the Super Bowl. Well, that's a problem, sir. You had Aaron Rodgers and you didn't have a top 5 defense with him. Only one time. Who was your coordinator? And let's hope that you don't bring him here. Secondly, I'm not sure I love the fact that he's going to call plays. Just not sure. Got to see it. Got to see what it looks like. It's one little aspect of what he said that probably made me a little bit nervous. Second thing he said, and this probably made all of you nervous, He was asked point blank, are you going to bring back Aaron Rodgers, or would you like to bring back Aaron Rodgers? And his answer was definitely. Oh, definitely. Why wouldn't I? I don't know. Why are we running it back? Why are we doing the same things again? We're running it back for what purpose? I thought the idea was moving forward, but this isn't what happened today. So there was that. Secondly, he's really excited about Will Howard. Well, that makes one of us. He knows a lot more about quarterback play than I do, but at the end of the day, I think there's a reason why. I think there's a reason why that Will Howard was a fifth or sixth round pick or whatever he was. Then you have him talking about the defense. And this is what really, really, really rubbed me the wrong way. And he said, basically, guess what? I love the defense, the scheme that is in place, the 3-4, that was put in place by Dom Capers and Bill Cowher way back when. Are we serious? I mean, one of the biggest issues the Steelers have had under Mike Tomlin is their defense and a lack of imagination. That's really what it is, period. And I think that when you look at the bottom line, you heard the Patriots, and you heard, what's his name, Edelman, Julian Edelman. You heard Tom Brady. You've heard a number of people talk about how elementary and how absolutely easy to diagnose, and how basic the defense that the Steelers were running, that it was antiquated, how easy it was to really go after it. That's what they were talking about. That this defense doesn't fool anybody or doesn't scare anybody, and doesn't, and now we're talking about running it back. And listen, and of course I got the all 22 football heroes on Twitter coming after me to explain how many teams use a 3-4 defense in the NFL. It's not about the scheme. Teams don't play their base defense hardly at all. It's not about the 3-4. That's not what it's about. It's about the fact that the scheme beyond the 3-4 was unimaginative, and it was taken advantage of. And many of these quarterbacks, many of these offensive-minded coaches, many of them looked at the Steelers' defense as being very easy to solve. And quite frankly, if you look this year, if the Steelers' defense wasn't, the front seven wasn't getting, crazy pressure, they were getting destroyed. Because at the end of the day, teams know how to diagnose it. So I know that you're trying to throw every Pittsburgh reference you can into your press conference, but when you say that you're going to stick with the defense that was put in by Dom Capers and Bill Cowher, I mean, that was a lifetime ago, and football is played completely different now than it was back then. So to me, it's like one of these things, and I always say, look, we're running it back. Just run it back. This tells me that the Steelers, the reason they hired Mike McCarthy is because they want more of the same. And I'm sure that those young guys, those young coordinators and everything else talked to the Steelers a lot about updating the facilities, updating the technology they have, looking at the analytics and all the other stuff and doing all kinds of things. In other words, trying to bring the Steelers into the 22nd century or whatever the hell it is, right? That's the biggest thing to me is I bet you they listened to Mike McCarthy and said, wow, this guy talks our language. He gets it, man. In the 70s, we won 4 and 6 years, baby. Anyway, let's bring our good friend Noah Howes in. Noah, I don't know if you watched any of the press conference. It was a lot more like a pep rally than a press conference in some ways. And the way I looked at it, I mean, Mike McCarthy won the press conference, if you really want to get into it. I mean, he said everything. I think he even had a Permanis reference. He talked about Greenfield and, everything else, and talked about Cowher and Tomlin and, Pittsburgh legends and, wearing, coming home from Mercy Hospital in a Steelers gear or whatever. I mean, he won the press conference, but if you listen to what he had to say and you're a Steeler fan that wanted a new direction, I'm not sure how you could be really all that excited about this.
No, but I mean, Paul, honestly, that's kind of what the Steelers are now, right? They're just Pittsburgh, pro-Pittsburgh propaganda. They're, a pep rally, a rah-rah Yinzer pep rally, Permanis and downtown and all of that. And like, that's just what they are. They're benefiting from a brand that was established with a lot of success in the 70s and the 90s and the 2000s. And it just seems very dull. Like they're just kind of coasting in neutral. That's what this hire was to me. If you were a team that maybe just needed a better offensive philosophy, but you had the personnel to be a Super Bowl contender, I wouldn't have hated this Mike McCarthy hire. I still think there are probably better options, but like he's the type of coach you hire if you're in win now mode. And the Steelers' inability to recognize that they are not in win now mode, or they should not be in win now mode. They might be in win now mode because that's how they operate. And I'm not advocating them for them to simply try and lose and tank, but they just keep doing the same things. I mean, they hired a short-term solution to a long-term problem. And that's where I think a lot of the fan frustration is. And yes, like you said, it's as someone who writes human interest stories, this hire is great for me. I'll find a whole bunch of great Mike McCarthy background stories over, the next couple of years or whatever. But for the Steelers, I don't know. I mean, you better hope this guy wins your Super Bowl in the next 3-4 years, because after that, he's on the wrong end of 60. Like, how much longer does he have to go? Is my point here. And this just seems like a franchise that needs to take a step back and look at things and say, like, all right, let's get a 3 to 5 year plan in place. And I don't know if this is a guy who is fit to give a good 3 to 5 year plan, because I think his 5-year plan is retirement. So the age, just the whole circumstance of it all, it just feels like, what they've been doing. It's just, lazy Yinzer, pro Pittsburgh, like us because we're the Steelers. It's the same thing.
Well, let me ask you, again, I'm not an all 22 hero on Twitter, so therefore maybe I shouldn't talk about scheme, because I'm not allowed to talk about scheme apparently. But when I hear him paying tribute to the defense that was installed by Dom Capers and Bill Cowher, that alarms me. I don't care. I got a lecture, Noah, about the fact that, half the teams use a 3-4. What are you talking about? It's not about the base defense. It's about the way it's implemented. It's about schematically how antiquated it is and how unbelievably bad the Steelers under Mike Tomlin were at adjusting it and changing it and adapting it every single year. That is what alarms me. Now, maybe he's going to hire a defensive coordinator and give him the ability, to do his magic. But I don't know that I'm all that excited when I hear you're going to keep the defense that Dom Capers put in.
Yeah, I mean, think about it in any other business, right? If you were hiring someone to do sales for like media technology, and they're like, yeah, like we're going to do it like Radio Shack did it back in the day. It's like, well, no, I don't want that. Like this just outdated references aren't good. His rhetoric should be more focused on, we need to do what these teams are doing now, right? This, like what the Seahawks did to turn things around so quickly. Offensively, what the 49ers have been doing. But yeah, like on the defensive note, yeah, you point out what's currently working in the game. It's cool to hear, the Cowher reference and the Capers reference and all that, because you know what? Yeah, Pittsburghers, they're super nostalgic people. And I get all of that, but those days are long gone, and the game has changed so much. The rules have changed. And while yes, the base of that scheme is still applicable to the modern NFL game. It's just like those are just outdated references that kind of hammer home again the point that I was trying to make where it's like this could have been like a long time thing or this should have been a long-term plan. And it just seems like we are going to watch this team be coached by the offensive version of Mike Tomlin.
And that's really kind of depressing. The other thing you said, Aaron, Noah, that I just am not all that really excited about is let's run it back with Aaron Rodgers, baby. He was asked point blank about Aaron Rodgers, and he said unequivocally, definitely I'd want him. Why wouldn't I want him back? I mean, is the goal to win 9 or 10 games? Is that what the goal is now? And win 8, 9 games and, maybe 10 games and, have a chance to get to the playoffs? Is that good enough? I just don't understand what is the process that the Steelers have implemented that is going to enable them to move forward. That's what I would like to know. And quite frankly, it don't feel like it happened today.
That's absolutely the goal, Paul. If it wasn't, Rooney would have fired Mike Tomlin rather than, sitting there and being upset that he quit. So yeah, that's what they're looking for. It's just safe. They would rather take the high floor rather than the high ceiling. And I guess in business practices, I guess it's safe, right? Because it's just like they're putting all their money into safe investments. They're putting a lot of money in their 401k, but like this is entertainment. This isn't necessarily supposed to be the time where you always go safe. Take some risks, go outside the box. That's what the bulk of your fan base was asking for, was to be different, to do something a little different. And I guess on paper, this was a different hire because he's almost twice the age of the last 2 head coaches you hired, and he coaches on the offensive side of the ball. But it looked like this hire in many ways was to preserve what they had been doing over the last however many years. And that's not what fans were looking to hear.
Yeah, well, and I'll say this, Noah, he's the second oldest coach in the league. Like, you just hired a guy who's the second oldest coach in the league. Age, it is what it is. It seems completely contrary to what the Steelers have done in the past. It seems completely contrary to we want to reset the organization. It seems completely contrary to any idea or fact, any thought or idea of we're moving forward.
Yep.
We're going to be progressive thinking. We're going to be forward thinking. Because here's the thing. This is what he didn't. I don't know if he said it or not. I listened to most of it, but I was trying to take notes on some of the high thing. But this is what it tells me. Noah, you're gonna run it back with Watt and Heyward and Highsmith and all the same guys on on that side of the ball. You know what I mean? You're gonna have pretty much all the same guys on the offensive side of the ball. Maybe you'll add a couple of receivers because he wants to go 3 receiver set. But it's going to be essentially the same roster as it was last year.
Yeah. And like, let's call a spade a spade. The roster was not good. I mean, they beat bad teams to sneak their way into the playoffs, right? They beat good teams in the beginning of the season and then fell apart midseason. And then they were able to be good enough to beat 4 non-playoff teams to earn their division championship. And then the moment they ran into a legitimate playoff defense, they got absolutely throttled because their personnel isn't good enough. Now, they have playmakers on the defensive side of the ball, and we've said this for years, that they're not getting a proper return on investment on that defense. And then offensively, they don't have good players. They have a couple of solid players, but they don't have true difference makers. Paul, and that's the big thing, I think, that kind of gets swept under the rug about this organization right now. When is the last time they drafted a true difference-making player? I guess you could say George Pickens, but he's no longer here. So where is it? Is it TJ Watt? Like, it's been a long time. They've drafted solid role players. They've drafted competent starters. But you look when they've thrived in their eras of winning Super Bowls, or even in the 90s when they got close but didn't get it done. They had consistent drafts. Once every 3 years, it felt like they were drafting like an all-pro type talent. And they're just not doing that right now. And they don't recognize that. And I think because they still have names like Watt and Heyward, guys who have had really good careers on the roster, they think it's all fine and dandy. And it's just not, man.
Well, obviously we'll be talking about the Steelers and Mike McCarthy, and as he builds his staff and people that he adds, and I mean, I basically, I think it was yesterday, basically put together a list of every single person with Pittsburgh ties, because McCarthy's a big Pittsburgh guy, and you know who his roommate was when he was at Pitt? There was a roommate that he lived with it, like an apartment in somewhere in Greenfield or something. When he in 1989, when he was I think it was a receivers coach at Pitt, there was a GA that lived with him. You know who it was?
Was it Gruden?
Frank Signetti.
Oh my! Look at that. He's not far down the road, Paul.
He's an IUP.
Yeah.
And, he had on his staff. Former Steel Valley. Was it Steel Valley he played at? Luke Getzey. Luke Getzey, who was on his staff, Pittsburgh guy. What's that guy's name? Tom Sula, the guy that Jim Tom Sula that was at San Francisco. He's a Mon Valley guy from way back. I mean, I could put together a whole entire staff. Brian Angelico was at Pitt, and he worked for the Packers. So I mean, we could put together a whole Pittsburgh staff. I think people would love that. But my point is, I don't
think they would. I mean, it's great again, but it's like there's a whole world outside of Pittsburgh. And I know some people don't really think that way, but like I'm telling you, Mike Tomlin wasn't from Pittsburgh. He won you a Super Bowl. Chuck Noll was from Cleveland. He won you 4, right? Like there are plenty of qualified people outside of Pittsburgh. And not to knock on, I love this place just as much as anybody else. And there are a lot of talented, incredible people who grow up here and go on to do great things. But it's also a big world. And maybe you could, this whole hometown bias thing could cool down a little bit.
Well, I know you're very generous with your time, but I wanted to pick your brain a little bit before I let you go.
Yeah.
I feel like the Pirates did what they usually do, which is find a way to screw up something. This weekend, to me, I know he's not on the team, and he's probably not going to be on the team, but, if you really were going to put him out to pasture and he was going to retire, and last year was the last year, he's still the most popular player on your team, even if he's not on your team. Yeah. Why not bring Andrew McCutchen to Pirate Fest, number one? And number two, you bring him there, you let him kiss babies and shake hands and take photos and all that stuff. And then, of course, the questions are all, the questions that are coming, right?
Yeah.
All you have to say is, Andrew's done a great job for this organization. He's been an unbelievable player. He's very popular with the fans. He's somebody who has really been a big part of, obviously the rebuilding that took place in 2013 to 15. He's a great ambassador for the city. We're going to continue to have open dialogue with Andrew about 2026. End of story. End of sentence. And then you know what I mean? Instead, he goes into this long-winded thing, basically making it very clear that Andrew McCutchen doesn't have a place on their 40-man roster and that they don't think he's good enough anymore. And, of course, that irritates Andrew McCutchen. And now we have a situation where I feel, there's a rift between the two, and there didn't need to be. Am I wrong about this?
No. I mean, yeah, it all comes down to just a lack of communication. If they were just upfront with him at the beginning of the season and just said, or the beginning of the offseason, and just said, look, we don't know if we'll have you back. I mean, I think they tried to subtly do that. I mean, think about it, Paul. Their first offseason target was one of the best designated hitters in the sport. They signed an all-star designated hitter to a multi-year contract. I mean, they could have picked any other position to upgrade, but they picked his. And yeah, I mean, I don't think they completely write off McCutchen from coming back, but I think their mentality is, look, he's kind of our last resort because they know he's interested. They know no other team's really going to seriously try to make an effort to sign him. And if they do, he's not really that interested in joining another team. So he's there. They have all the leverage in this situation. But yeah, communication could have been the way to get around all of this, just to be open and honest with him. Now, I will say a couple of other things in defense of the Pirates, which I don't often do. One, this guy's had 3 opportunities at a retirement tour. Right. I don't think when they brought him back in 2023 that they anticipated this being even a possible issue in January of 2026. You know, he could have recognized that maybe they were going to go in a different way. And, you know, those are conversations that probably should have happened toward the end of last season in August and September. But Ben Cherington didn't know if he was going to be back or not, probably, you know, and a lot of people in the front office did. So that wasn't on anyone's mind. And now you're just in this spot where they're actually trying to get better. And I don't know if McCutchen goes along with that, but they can't just flat out say, hey, you're not good enough, because they haven't earned the right to say that, Paul, because they haven't been good enough either.
Right.
And the other problem here is this. Most people in Andrew McCutchen's spot could get work, but it would come with the caveat. If you do not perform, we'll cut you.
Yeah.
You're a low-cost 39-year-old who can only do a certain set of things at this point in your career. And if you don't do those well, we're going to cut you loose. The Pirates know they can't do that. If they sign this guy, he's here for the whole season. And even if he's batting 190 and there are guys in AAA hitting the cover off the ball, which I don't know if that'll be ever be a problem for this organization, but he's going to take down a roster spot because they know if they sign up for this, it's a whole nother year. And I mean, last year was an unpleasant year for all parties involved for that relationship. McCutchen didn't perform well. He was very vocal about how displeased he was with the organization. And I don't think the organization took too kindly to that. So they're in a very tough spot right now. I don't know how it gets resolved. Communication could have certainly been something that would have preserved this a little bit better, but you know, we are where we are with this.
You know, I look at the way that, you know, the Steelers moved on from Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah.
And, you know, look, Ben wanted to play another year. He, you know, and you know, if you don't believe that, all you need to do is listen to a couple of his podcast episodes where he makes it very clear he's not happy that they told him, you know, that they basically told him you're done. But they did it really at the beginning of the season. They said, listen, this is it.
Yeah.
We're done. I mean, you can, we want you to retire a Steeler. I mean, if you want to keep playing, I guess you got to, you know, go somewhere else. I know you don't want to do that, but this is it. So when he went through that season, he knew this was it. I mean, I don't understand how you can't have that conversation with Andrew McCutchen and say, listen, you know, this is it. No more. This is your last year. You know, take your tour. Every city you go into, hopefully they give you a rocking chair or some sort of, you know, gift like they do, and make it a year to celebrate you. But then we're going to move on. I just think there's so much value in that when you have an all-time great, because now you got a guy that you're going to have to patch it up with. You know, if you have like a reunion tour or you have, you know, whatever, you have, you know, bring somebody back in, you know, bring a team back in you want to celebrate or whatever. I mean, you know, there's a chance he might not show up.
I mean, I think the difference is the Steelers have a lot more credibility in the sense where they can say, hey, we're moving on, because even then they were a successful organization, right? And the Pirates, it's like, who are you to tell Andrew McCutchen to kick rocks? The other part of it is, like I mentioned earlier, is that Cherington didn't know if this was going to even be his problem, you know, toward the end of last season. And the third part of it, I think, is this. When you're operating under such a limited budget for this team, you can't cross that Andrew McCutchen option off the list. It's why they haven't completely come out and said it ain't happening, because they're going to try to go find better alternatives. But if they can't find a right-handed bat that can hit them at least 12 home runs, they know they got one here. And he might be a pain in their side for a handful of reasons, but that's what they're going to sign up for. They know they have that fallback. But when you go into an offseason and you're running this franchise, you know that you can't cross any options off because your resources are so limited. You've got to have every single option on the table. And that part of that was Andrew McCutchen. It clearly wasn't their first, second, or third option, but that's how we got here. It's a whole bunch of people's faults. And it's sad that it got to this, I guess. And again, I want to revert back to, why are you still playing is kind of a question that needs to be asked. And if he legitimately believes that last year was just a down year and he can be better, go ahead and prove it. But I think a lot of this could have been avoided if Kutch was just real with himself and recognized that, you know what, hey, they probably aren't going to want to have me back next year anyway. This could have been it.
I get it. Last question, real quick. Yeah, just give me your percentage that you think Andrew McCutchen plays this year.
I think it's I'll go 60%, and I think it will be with the Pirates if he does play. I don't know if he makes the opening day roster. It might be a thing where we get into May, they have a couple of injuries, they sign him, he gets a couple weeks in Altoona, and he's with the team from June on, and
all right.
Yeah.
He's Noah Howes. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely, Paul. Thanks for having me on.
All right. That's Noah Howes. And, of course, he is a guy that does a lot of things for us at the Post-Gazette. We will continue to talk about the Steelers. And, of course, we talked about Mike McCarthy. And just to sort of run it back, his press conference was sort of a throwback in some ways. And, many of the things he said, they sort of give me a little bit of pause just from the standpoint of it sounds like the Steelers really did just take the safest route possible. We'll continue tomorrow. Until then, enjoy your day.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.